What a move, guys. So a bit of obligatory clout claiming here. You can see from last week's show, if you followed it on Friday, the moves we had after the Jackson Hole Symposium. Basically doing the giga pump off the bottom, BTC coming into TP at the range EQ, ETH coming into our TP at the former all-time high, making new all-time highs. Hype is still running, targeting that $50 level, and ENA came into the equal high pocket where we had TP2. You can also see in the Discord, all of these have been shared live with constant updates. Hype done this morning, still running. BTC trailed out on that puke overnight for TP2. You can see ENA live updates. You can see some new ones coming in, and you can also see the TPs 1 and 2 taken across ETH and ENA. Not to mention the bragging rights channel, which has been phenomenal the last few days. You can see that members are also cooking in here. So all in all, the Discord's on a tear at the moment, and pretty happy with that. If you want to join that, you can follow the link in my description below. You can also get access to my live trades, my market outlooks, and the Money Noodle indicator, which we'll go over in this video. Now, for those who don't know me, my name is Paradise. I've been trading crypto since 2017 and an active analyst in the Miles High Club for the last 1.5. I made life-changing money in 2017. I lost it all and I rebuilt from zero. If you want to learn how I did it and the mistakes to avoid, then you should hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell below. Back to BTC, and where are we sitting right now with it? Mondays for me are difficult. I generally don't have the best read on the market, generally because I find it to be a choppy day. I generally don't trade them, but that doesn't mean you guys can't get updates on what we are watching right now. So as it stands, we had that big pump up. We rejected the EQ as mentioned earlier. Now we came down and we actually swept these lows overnight. So what happens from this point is quite telling. Basically what that means is we go to the weekly. I've been sharing this chart for a while if you've been following my streams of miles and also what I went over in the last two videos. Basically every time we've had an SFP of the lows into an imbalance or an FVG, it has marked the bottom for a move up. So as it stands, we currently closed the weekly bullish. We had a bullish weekly SFP. And we just need to see how that carries through. I think local price action right now is difficult to sort of dictate and get a read on where that's going. It's generally why I wait for Mondays to pass and wait for the Tuesday open. But as it stands, I'm just remaining to play the same format I have been playing, which is when you get those weekly SFPs into an imbalance, it generally marks up into new highs. Once again, local price action isn't telling us that yet, but we're just watching it for now. So once again, if we do lose that level, same plan as last week. The weekly Noodle has held since 2023 for every retest. If we get back down to that level, I need to just remain a bull. This is where I'll look to load up shop. And if we start to lose that, I will potentially consider the trend done for this cycle, but that's a way off. So let's just see where we go in relation to this current price action. So what I actually find quite interesting about BTC here is, yes, it looks quite bearish with that full reversion of the candle, but at the same time, you need to picture what happened on Friday. So basically, across the timeline, a lot of people were de-risking ahead of that Jackson Hole event. Into the lows here, we had an H4 bullish divergence print, which is why I started to long. Now, what happened is you can imagine the amount of people chasing in this candle. So if they weren't positioned and they saw this, a lot of people would have been market longing into this, and no doubt their stops would have been under this low or just under it. So what actually is interesting to me is the fact that we came and cleared those overnight. We've taken all those stops out. So in lining up with the weekly SFP we've had, I kind of want to see that push up from here. Now, as I've said a few times now, the local price action isn't indicative of this yet. I think the line in the sand that I want to see is quite clean. So if we just mark out this structural level here, this is the market structure break level. You can also see this is the point of breakdown. If we mark out the supply level up here, we also have that weekly VWAP, no, the anchored VWAP from the 94K lows that has been historically respected for bullish retest that we're now trading under. So right now, all I really want to see is a clearance above these levels. That is the H4 Noodle, that is the market structure break level, and is the supply level at around 114,700. We get above that, I think we mark up into the range EQ and potentially start trading up into the highs. Now, if we start to roll over from this level and accept below the range low, then I think we trend lower. If that happens, I did notice a lot of alts had relative strength overnight. BTC basically had this big puke, but alts didn't really have that much of a sell-off on strong alts, I should say. Hard to generalize that to the greater market of altcoins. But as it stands, we went over this last week. We can get rid of all of this for a sec. Right now, this is a range in these 2 points. And you can see we are currently retesting the range high. And you can see right now we're in another range. So effectively, if you're just trading ranges, you can say, I'm just looking for trades between these two range-bound points. And effectively, if we come into these lows and accept under here, then we are in a new range, and I'll look for the rotation between the EQ down to the lows and so forth and so on. Now, what it is about the lows down here, it lines up with the weekly noodle. So if we do accept in there, that's what we'll be watching as stated. Moving on to ETH, you can see that we made a new all-time high, but we actually closed the weekly as a bearish SFP. So bullish SFP close for Bitcoin, even though it looks weaker, and a bearish SFP close for Ethereum, even though it looks stronger. So really what I want to see right here, I actually think we might be due a bit of a pullback on ETH, basically because we are also seeing across ETH BTC this bearish H4 divergence up here. So very clean breakout. This is a chart I shared on the last show. This is one of my favorite setups. You can screenshot this and internalize it. We'll go over why this is one of my favorite setups in another show. But in terms of where it is right now, we have this bearish H4 divergence printing across ETH BTC and also awesome oscillator. And I do think potentially we could come down for a sweep of this key low into the H4 noodle here before looking for trend continuation. So as it stands for what that means for Ethereum, I'm looking for a pullback into 4,500, give or take. That lines up with the H4 noodle. Basically, I do think we reject here just based on this current local price action. But what would revert that idea, that thesis, is if we start accepting above former all-time high and consolidating up here. Maybe get some sort of consolidation for a sweep, nice SFP of that range. For closing back above it, we could treat this as a deviation, and then we look for trend continuation up. I think in terms of this big move up on ETH, a pullback into that 4,500 level is quite constructive and healthy. So we just need to sort of watch what happens with that. Once again, I don't really trade Mondays. They're generally choppy and it doesn't really give you much read on the market. I think tonight at the New York Open and potentially at tomorrow's close, we get more sort of direction on where price can go. Moving on to Solana. Now, Solana has obviously had some decent strength for the past few days. That's indicative by the Sol ETH chart, the Sol BTC chart, also the Sol dominance chart. If we just flick to the Sol BTC chart quickly, we can see it is currently testing this level I marked out, and I think it was the first video we did together on here. Basically, what I'm seeing on this, on the weekly chart, is a very nice deviation forming. Now, the deviation isn't confirmed until we get back above this monthly level, but right now it looks quite constructive, and potentially there is a rejection on the cards. But what I really want to see is this clearance here, indicated by my lovely squiggle I've drawn. We are coming to weekly trend, we are coming to weekly resistance. If we flip both of those things, I think this can move up. So if we go back to the Sol USD chart, it is coming into a monthly level. So this is where I don't try to front run the breakout. You can see historically this has been a very strong level that formed back in 2021. Prices respected it, both the bullish and bearish side. So we're coming into that right now. Effectively, we don't want to reject here. If you trade sort of classical patterns, you'll notice this is potentially a head and shoulders forming, although I don't think so just yet. But if we go to the weekly chart, I think, yeah, you just want to see some clearance above that. I was actually hoping we had a weekly close above that level, which would start to make me a bit more risk on. It's also difficult in this area. We have this weekly FVG just above it. So, once we get a clearance in there, we might see some rejection. We want to see it clear that also at around $220. By the way, the monthly level I've been talking about is $208, bang on. So as it stands from an intraday perspective, not much to go on for me. I really can't long this here. I think if you have been longing trend retest on the way up, you caught a nice move. But I think right now, we're currently on the daily, potentially SFPing the highs. We did SFP on the daily close. We might be SFPing the SFP right there. Bit of a mouthful, I know. But if we get any sort of pullback on Sol, I think it offers a very nice area in this daily imbalance in here, this daily FVG at around 195 to 190. That also lines up with the daily noodle. So any sort of pullback today, maybe US session sells off a bit and looking for some sort of bottom to form in here and another attack at this high at the monthly level at 208 before potentially breaking above. If that happens, we can start going a bit down the risk curve and looking at Sol betas. This is a list I have right here. I haven't been mapping that many of them out just yet because I need to see that clearance, but this is the time you can start making some plans. I think in terms of FARTCOIN right now, it looks interesting. If we just get rid of all this and just put in the range low here, we are holding above this level. We're also forming a divergence into here, but obviously being capped by the daily trend. This is something I want to see flipped. I think price looks quite constructive on the 4-hour. We flipped the H4 trend. We got back inside the range low. Effectively, this is now a deviation, although it's pretty choppy. We're just looking for some sort of continuation here from this consolidation up. If we flick over to Ray, Ray is something I'm in currently on a spot position. This was basically based on the weekly chart. So I was charting this against Dupe as a pair chart, Jupiter. And this looks like the much stronger asset has been outperforming it. So basically, if Solana does pick up and we see a rotation into lower caps and stuff, within the eco, then obviously Ray and Dupe are going to be direct beneficiaries of that due to people trading on those dexes. This really ramps up when on-chain season comes along. So I took a position on this a few weeks ago based on this weekly close above. I almost cut it, but I had to remember that we are on the weekly time frame, so I need to see how the weekly closed. The weekly closed is a bullish pin bar, so now we really just want to see it hold above this monthly level at 3.37. I think this can push up quite decently into the next resistance at $4.6. But just sort of waiting to see how this Solana chart pans out at the monthly level. Onto Sol ETH. So basically, if you don't know what these are, they're pair charts. I'm just comparing numerator to denominator, Solana versus Ethereum. You can see on the way down, this basically just shows relative strength, right? You can see on the way down, the daily trend has capped the Sol ETH chart. So Sol has underperformed. It's had nice pumps up into it, but then it's rejected and ETH's taken over. Effectively, we are tagging that right now. Also why I'm having some reservations about rotating into Sol, despite the current strength it's showing. Ideally, I'd love to see that trend flipped and accepted above. I think that could be a really good indication of when we start rotating in. But in terms of where we're sitting right now, I just think ETH looks quite good, and that's why I'm looking to long that pullback into it. By the way, if you don't know what this indicator is, it's called the Money Noodle. It's something we have in the Miles High Club. You can get access to that if you sign up, link in the description. And it is an excellent barometer for trend trading. Being a trending indicator, makes sense, right? But in terms of sort of how my system works, I look for key levels to line up with the noodle. You never trade it in isolation, so to speak, but if we go to the ETH chart again, you can see the setup I mentioned earlier in the stream that I'm looking for is the confluence of dynamic and static support. So what that means, the dynamic support is the trend, the static support is the support resistance level. I like to see a confluence of those two things, and you can also start drawing out your points of interest within those, like this H4 FEG in there. I don't never just long the noodle itself. I never really long support resistance on itself or POIs. I want to see the confirmation of those things having confluence with each other. So hence why I'm looking for a pullback into that. Once again, you can get that in the Miles High Club. You sign up, link in the description. You can also see in the Discord, I have lots of literature on this. I have videos on how to use the Money Noodle. I've got different strategies in using it. I've got a whole 5-minute series in my education section on different trading concepts. A lot of them revolve around using the noodle, as well as just generic standard price action concepts and how to use TradingView with different indicators. So that leaves us with enough for today's stream. I'll be back in a couple of days with another update. I think in terms of today, just be patient, see how price resolves, wait till the NY session opens up tonight, and basically wait for tomorrow's close to get better directionality on where we can expect price to go. Also, if you have not done it yet, make sure to hit subscribe and turn the notification bell on so you get notified of my videos as soon as I go live. Other than that, thank you for joining, and I'll see you in a few days with a new update. Cheers.